You're listening to KSGF Mornings with Nick Reed on 104.1 KSGF, Springfield's News Talk FM.
We've got Senator Blunt with us this morning. Welcome. Thank you for being with us. How do you do?
Hey, good morning, Nick. How are you this morning?
Doing pretty well. Hey, I don't know if you...
What's the weather like in Springfield?
You know what? It's pretty good. We had some showers this morning, and we may get a little this afternoon, and may even see frost overnight, but 68 tomorrow and 76 on Thursday. So it's pretty, it's not bad. Yeah, it's Ozark weather.
68. Frost overnight and 68. It's classic Missouri weather.
Yeah, right? It absolutely is. I don't know if you saw this or not, but as you know, President Obama, he's once again out there talking about gender equality and passing laws that, well, I don't know, it's supposed to make men and women get equal pay. And it's every time he talks about this, it's reported that the White House pays women less than men on average. And so Jay Carney was peppered with questions about this the other day, and he acknowledged, yeah, we do pay women less, but we pay them less than everybody else does. So we're not as bad as everyone else. That's what he said.
Oh my gosh. I don't know what to even say. I'm for equal pay for equal work. That's what we ought to have happen in society today. Men and women working the same place, doing the same job, ought to get the same salary. There's no doubt about that. You know, the president said we solved that problem a year ago or so with the Lilly Ledbetter law. All this most recent thing to us is just raise the liability caps. It's better pay for lawsuit abuse is what this legislation really is. It has nothing to do, very little to do with equal pay for equal work. Supposedly that was solved long ago in another bill that was largely about who could sue who and when they could sue. We should have equal pay for equal work. There's no doubt about that. And this is just trying to, I think, again, to distract attention from other problems that the law hasn't taken care of. And, in fact, the law has created, like with the president's health care plan, that isn't working. The inequality, if there's an inequality under the president's inequality of opportunity, people have less take-home pay than they had in 2008. The utility bills are going up. That's harder on poor people than it is on people who aren't poor. And the president is hurting the very people with his rules and regulations that supposedly he says he wants to help.
Yeah, speaking of the distraction, we saw, I guess it was the end of last week, this report about torture. And I felt like I was being beamed back 6 years ago. And all of a sudden, the Democrats are talking about Bush and Cheney and torture. And I'm thinking, what on earth is going on here? I mean, first off, many of these Democrats that act as if they're outraged, I think that it's fair to assess they knew about all this stuff all along. None of this is any news to them. They're acting like it is. But, I mean, to me, this is clearly a distraction. Once again, let's reach all the way back to the Bush administration. Like, are we really talking about this?
Well, you're right, and there's no question that Nancy Pelosi, for instance, knew. She was the leading Democrat on the Intelligence Committee after 9/11, and there is no question. In fact, I heard the person yesterday say who he knew she knew because he briefed her. He was the CIA person that told her what they were doing. I heard somebody yesterday, Nick, talking about this, say, so maybe we did prevent an attack or two on the country. Was it worth it? Go back to the way, if you could possibly get people back in the mindset after 9/11, when we clearly anticipated and expected a second attack at any time, people would have said in a minute it was worth it to figure out how to prevent that from happening again. And now, a dozen years later, you've got somebody saying, well, but was it really worth it? Maybe we did prevent an attack or two, but what did we give up as a nation to defend ourselves? I'm for civil liberties. I don't want the government to be too intrusive. I have a sense of how this program works and is trying to get information from people who are enemies of the United States in what at that minute that we considered a state of war with us and an unnamed country, but terrorist groups who clearly had just attacked the United States. And that particular period didn't last very long. None of the people that were involved in directing that apparently were interviewed in this report. This is a report trying, again, I think, to distract from today's issues by, just like you said, going back and talking about trying to get people back to talk about something that doesn't really relate to their daily life today, because those things, health care, equality of opportunity, job opportunities, good take-home pay, those things aren't going very well for the president, and he knows it.
Senator McCaskill's been chairing this committee dealing with GE and
you mean GM?
Or GM, rather, yeah. Sorry, thank you, GM, General Motors, and with the ignition deal. And I'm just amazed. I want to throw this thought out for you and get in your reflection. And I suppose this is a sort of an anecdotal example of the Democratic Party as a whole. But some of the things that she has said in terms of how GM has misled the American people and how they need to be held accountable and how consumers need to feel as if what they're being told that can be trusted. And I'm thinking, she and her colleagues pulled the biggest scam over on the American people when it came to Obamacare. And I think the audacity of anyone, and in this case it's her, to sit up and scold somebody for misleading the American people when it came to a product or a service, who sold us the bill of goods of Obamacare. I'm just incredulous at that.
Well, clearly the Obamacare promises are not what they were supposed to be. The president refuses to enforce the law because once this law is enforced, even more people are not going to like it. And that's why I introduced the Enforce Act, which is a bill that would allow members of Congress to take the president to court, the administration to court, and let a judge decide if the administration's enforcing the law or not. But we don't have that ability right now. The House has already passed the Enforce Act, and the Obamacare disaster is maybe a political disaster for Democrats, but much worse than that. It's a disaster for virtually everybody's health care. By the time this is over, whether it's the 4% tax on everybody's health insurance plan, even the one you get at work, or the fact that just people have deductibles that are almost like not having insurance, this is a plan that's not working. But on General Motors, the investment that the so-called investment that the administration made there, that the Obama administration made in their first year, were basically they just took the guaranteed bonds that were supposed to be as good as the physical assets of the company. They took them away from retirees and others that had them, and essentially gave the stock in that company to other people. And it was a huge violation of bankruptcy law and every other rule of law you could ever have. Now, let me say one other thing, though. At the same time, I think General Motors has really done the wrong thing here by not recalling these vehicles. And there's plenty of blame that General Motors has to answer to. But the way General Motors was being run at the time, the government owned a lot of it. The stockholders that have been guaranteed, their guaranteed stock, that they would always get that money back as long as there were physical assets left. The administration just, again, ignored that part of the law and said, no, you're selfish. The president said, you're selfish if you actually want your money back on these bonds that you were told you couldn't possibly lose your money on, as long as there was a building or an asset that could be sold to give the guaranteed bondholders the money that they had loaned, in essence, to General Motors.
Senator Blunt, know you're busy. Appreciate you being with us, and hope the weather up there fares well as it seems to be here.
Well, I'm going to be home next week. I'm looking forward to, if you'll arrange some good April weather for me in Southwest Missouri, I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Well, safe travels on your way back. Thank you much.